أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين. أما بعد, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says in His glorious book in Surat An-Naml, verse 15, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا دَاوُدَ وَسُلَيْمَانَ عِلْمًا وَقَالَا الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ الَّذِي فَضَّلَنَا عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِّنْ عِبَادِهِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And we had certainly given to David and Solomon knowledge. And they said, praise is due to Allah, who has favored us over many of His believing servants. Now, in Surat An-Naml, there are several stories in there. And one of them is the story of Prophet Sulaiman and the Queen of Sheba. The stories in the Quran are not meant to, like, informative. The Quran is a book of guidance. So the stories that are in the Quran are meant to give guidance. And inshallah, we'll go into the story a little bit and try to get some of that guidance and some of the instructions from it. Now, Surat An-Naml, which is chapter 27, it's all about the importance of civilizational superiority. You have to be superior, the Muslims have to be superior in their civilization. And excellence requires strong leadership. And the story of Prophet Sulaiman is a lesson in leadership. You want, management, key points in management and in leadership, it's in Surat An-Naml. So this is the story of not a multinational, it's a multi-species civilization that had, it had birds, it had jinn, it has men, it had so many things, in it. And the lessons from this story is any organization that has the same qualities mentioned in the surah have to be successful. That's a recipe for success and less a recipe for excellence. And the verse I recited, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا دَاوُدَ وَسُلَيْمَانَ عِلْمًا. They had knowledge. Allah has given them knowledge. وَقَالَ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ الَّذِي فَضَّلَنَا عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِّنْ عِبَادِهِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And they realized the value of this knowledge, and they thanked Allah for that bounty. So you have to recognize knowledge and its value and who's giving it to you. So they had that and they were thankful. Verse 16, وَوَرِثَ سُلَيْمَانُ دَاوُودَ وَقَالَ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ عُلِّمْنَا مَنطِقَ الطَّيْرِ وَأُوتِينَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ إِنَّ هَذَا لَهُوَ الْفَضْلُ الْمُبِينُ. So this organization had succession planning. It did not die with the passing of Prophet Dawood. Prophet Sulaiman was groomed to take on the responsibility, so they had succession planning. So one generation inherits the other and continues the message. وَأُوتِينَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. And they recognized that they were given, they had the capabilities of everything. There were so many things that were under their control, and they were out to get, more for the purpose of fixing the earth and doing the responsibility that Allah put us on this earth for. So they were ambitious, and that's what we get from وَأُوتِينَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ, and we were given of all things. Indeed, this is evident bounty. That's what Prophet Sulaiman was saying. In verse 17, وَحُشِرَ لِسُلَيْمَانَ جُنُودُهُ مِنَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ وَالطَّيْرِ فَهُمْ يُوزَعُونَ. And gathered for Solomon were his soldiers of the jinn and men and birds, and they were marching in rows. So this civilization, وَحُشِرَ لِسُلَيْمَانَ, they had discipline and organization. جُنُودُهُ, they had military power. مِنَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ وَالطَّيْرِ, they were multinational, they were multi-species. So there were different types of groups all coming together into one civilization. فَهُمْ يُوزَعُونَ, they were great in numbers and they were well organized. So that's the property of that organization. And the verses continue in verse 18. حتى إذا أتوا على وادي النمل قالت نملة يا أيها النمل ادخلوا مساكنكم لا يحطمنكم سليمان وجنوده وهم لا يشعرون. They came upon a valley that had ants in it, and one of the ants gave a command to the rest of the ants: hide, hide, go back into your homes, so that Sulaiman and his armies don't step on you, and while they perceive not. So Sulaiman took his army on practical training. They did not just sit there in their forts. He was out with taking all this army, roaming around the earth and fixing what needed to be fixed and implementing justice. And this organization was well known and respected by the evidence that the ants knew that there is no way that a prophet of Allah that had this great civilization would hurt even a small ant knowing. So they knew that this organization was out to do good and they would never do anything bad, knowingly. فَتَبَسَّمَ ضَاحِكًا مِنْ قَوْلِهَا. And Prophet Solomon, he smiled and used at her speech because he knew that his reputation preceded him. I mean, that he would never hurt anyone knowingly, and everyone knew it. And he was thankful to Allah and recognized the bounties that he received, because this civilization followed strict morals. They did not do anything that they wished. They followed the guidance from Allah, and they were restricted by the orders of Allah. They could not just do anything they wanted. And فتبسم ضاحكا من قولها وقال ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه. This أن أعمل صالحا ترضاه, Prophet Sulaiman was praying to Allah to give him ways to thank him and to do things that Allah would accept, because not everything we do is accepted by Allah. So the actions that he was doing conformed to the shara of Allah, and that's the only way that these can be accepted. وَأَدْخِلْنِي بِرَحْمَتِكَ فِي عِبَادِكَ الصَّالِحِينَ. This leader showed humility. He wanted Allah to admit him to his mercy and the ranks of the righteous servants. So with all this power that Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam had, he had humility, and he had humility in front of Allah. وَتَفَقَّدَ الطَّيْرَ فَقَالَ مَا لِيَ لَا أَرَى الْهُدْهُدَ أَمْ كَانَ مِنَ الْغَائِبِينَ in verse 20. And he took attendance of the birds and said, why don't I see the hoopoe, or is he not there? So we get from that management of that civilization is aware where their people are. People don't just come willy-nilly, come in and out. Everything is in perfect order. He knows where everyone is, and that's what effective management does. And management institutes punctuality and seriousness. When it's time to gather, it's time to gather. Not, when I feel like it, I'll show up. That is not a property of a powerful and superior civilization. In verse 21, Prophet Sulaiman was threatening to slaughter that hoopoe if he did not give a valid excuse for his absence. And we get from this that there was strict order in this organization, and there were reward and punishment. But yet, there was fairness. Maybe he had an excuse. He did not, say, no, you're not here, you're done. No. If you had an excuse, that's fine. So there was fairness in this organization. And then we know the story that the hoopoe, showed up soon afterwards, and he brought news that there was a kingdom in Saba, in Sheba, in Yemen, that they were worshiping other than Allah. So this low-level member, hoopoe is a bird in a huge civilization. This little bird, he had positiveness and he was proactive. Nobody asked him to go and see if there was any other things that need to be done. He took it upon himself. He bought in to the values of this civilization, And even though he was low-level worker, he wanted to contribute, and he was positive. And then he brought the information with accuracy. He did not embellish. What he saw was they were worshiping other than Allah, and he came back with that news, and that is exactly what he delivered. He did not add a word or take out a word. And then, at the end of the story, after they're saying, how could they bow to anyone other than Allah? And in verse 26, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa rabbul arsh al-azim. Allah, there is no deity except Him, Lord of the great throne. So this positiveness and dedication to the values of this organization, are shown in actions. I mean, he literally felt it. I mean, because we live in this country, and if your heart does not break when you see people away from Allah, we don't have the values that this little hoopoo has. If you don't feel bad that the people are going astray and they're gonna, you feel sorry for them and you want to guide them, you have not bought into the values of Islam. Because our job is to save everyone we can and guide them to Allah, not to be witnesses so they go to hell. That's what shaitan wants. If you do that, you're helping shaitan. So this bird, this low-level worker embraced the goals and the values of this great civilization of Prophet Sulaiman. And, and did not just do the job, just to get paid. And a lot of us, unfortunately, when we have a job, we may feel that we'll only do enough for what they are paying us. No, you accepted a position, you do your best, regardless of what you're paid. What you're paid has nothing to do with the dedication that you have to put in work. So, Prophet Sulaiman in verse 27 said, قَالَ سَنَنْظُرْ أَصَدَقْتَ أَمْ كُنْتَ مِنَ الْكَاذِبِينَ. So he said, when the news came to him, he said, we will see whether you were truthful or you were a liar. And that's what effective managers do. They don't just take the news at face value. Trust, but verify. There's always confirmation of the news that's coming to you. Otherwise, when you act, you could oppress somebody and do wrong if you don't verify your information. So he said, fine, take this letter, throw it to them, and move away and let's see what they do. So analysis and verification must be done before action. He did not say, oh, they're kuffar, get the army, let's go and bring them to the fold of Allah. No. Send them a letter saying, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, come to me in obedience to Allah, or else. So there was, there's analysis and verification necessary before acting. So the hoopoe took this letter and threw it on the throne of the queen. And the queen, read it to her, court. Now, she had also a civilization. And there was a powerful civilization, but they were not attached to Allah. And the difference in this organization, between the organization of Prophet Sulaiman and the organization of the Queen of Sheba, is when the news came to her, she asked her court, what should we do? So they had democracy, which is a good value. And the court said, do whatever you want, we're strong. They were stupid. They were not wise. We're strong, so whatever you come up with, we're right behind you. Hang on. I mean, there has to be, there has to be a little bit of wisdom before acting. So that's a contrast between the two. So what they did in verse 36, they decided, okay, we're going to send a bribe. They called it a gift, but really it's a bribe to Prophet Sulaiman to see if he would back off and leave them alone. And that insulted Prophet Sulaiman because the manager or the leader of a great civilization, they have values. They cannot be bought and sold. They answer to a higher power, which is Allah. And they cannot be bought with a little bribe, whether it's billions of dollars or whether it's hundreds of dollars, it doesn't matter. A bribe is a bribe. So he did not accept that, and he threatened them. So the queen decided that I'm going to go talk to him and see if he would, leave us alone or see what happens. So Prophet Sulaiman wanted to impress the Queen of Sheba and her people with their superior civilization that they had. So he asked his court, who would go and get me her throne? So one of the, the story, one of the jinn said, I'll get it to you before, you finish from your court. And somebody who had the knowledge of the book said, I'll bring it to you before you blink. And it was there. So they took it, they changed some stuff on it, so that make it just look slightly different. So when, this leader was demonstrating to her his capabilities to impress her. Because if you don't impress your opponent, they're not going to buy into your value or even, be willing to listen to them. So they changed it, and when she came over, he said, is your throne, because her throne was legendary. It's like, is your throne something like this? So she gave a very, very diplomatic answer. She says, it looks like it. She didn't say yes, she didn't say no. Because if she said yes, she would have been in big trouble. How could it be here when I left it, in Yemen? So it was a very, very diplomatic answer. But she was impressed, but not impressed enough to believe. And then in verse 44 in Surat An-Naml, when قِيلَ لَهَا ادْخُلِي الصَّرْحَ فَلَمَّا رَأَتْهُ حَسِبَتْهُ لُجَّةً وَكَشَفَتْ عَنْ سَاقَيْهَا. So he said, enter the palace. So she entered the palace, she saw water underneath. So she pulled up her garb so that she doesn't get wet. And he told her, no, this is a smooth glass floor that is over the water. We don't have that technology today. To have a seamless floor that you cannot distinguish between the floor and the water under it, we don't have that technology. Now when she saw that, that's when she said, قالت ربي إني ظلمت نفسي وأسلمت مع سليمان لله رب العالمين. When she saw that superiority in technology and in capabilities of this great civilization, that's when she believed, because now she's impressed. This is something we can't even think about, yet this civilization has done. So the goal was achieved because she was overwhelmed with this civilization of Prophet Sulaiman. Now, contrast, earlier in Surat An-Naml, there was the story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam with Fir'aun. Now contrast the story with that in verse 13. فَلَمَّا جَاءَتْهُمْ آيَاتُنَا مُبْصِرَةً قَالُوا هَذَا سِحْرٌ مُبِينٌ. But when there came to them, to Fir'aun, our visible signs, all the great miracles that Prophet Musa brought Fir'aun, all of these miracles, Fir'aun did not care. I mean, they knew it was right, but it's like, who are you? You're not a civilization. You're just a man, and you got a bunch of slaves behind you. They were not impressed. Prophet Musa at that time did not have an impressive civilization. He did not have the superiority in the civilizational aspect to impress Fir'aun. So the contrast between those two stories in Surat An-Naml, cannot be any more, visible. So Prophet Musa did not have the civilization behind him. He had the great signs from Allah. And he could not impress Fir'aun and have him believe. But Prophet Sulaiman had that civilization behind him, and he was able to impress the Queen of Sheba, and then she believed. And she submitted and accepted Islam. Now, if you look at the last part of Surat An-Naml, after this contrast, then there are several verses that reminds every superpower that no matter how strong you get, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is above all. He has the top power. All things return to Him. So do not be deluded with your abilities and your superiority to think that nobody can defeat you, because Allah is above all. So from verses 60 to 64, several verses showing Allah's power in creation and asking and exclaiming, أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ? How can you have a God with Allah? So, أَمَّنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَأَنزَلَ لَكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَأَنبَتْنَا بِهِ حَدَائِقَ ذَاتَ بَهْجَةٍ مَا كَانَ لَكُمْ أَن تُنبِتُوا شَجَرَهَا أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ بَلْ هُمْ قَوْمٌ يَعْدِلُونَ. Creation of heavens and earth and sending rains and growing beautiful gardens. Who other than Allah can do this? Nobody. Nobody can do this. So Allah, there is no God but Allah. The second one, أَمَّنْ جَعَلَ الْأَرْضَ قَرَارًا وَجَعَلَ خِلَالَهَا أَنْهَارًا وَجَعَلَ لَهَا رَوَاسِيَ وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَ الْبَحْرَيْنِ حَاجِزًا أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ بَلْ أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Who gives stability on this earth that we can walk and it's stable and it's not shaking and destroying everything on it? Who does that? Rivers and barriers between the seas that I talked about a couple of weeks ago. Who does that? أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ. Is there somebody besides Allah that can do this? No. أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ وَيَجْعَلُكُمْ خُلَفَاءَ الْأَرْضِ أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ قَلِيلًا مَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Helping ones in distress when you get in trouble. Who's going to get you out of this trouble? Who other than Allah is going to get you out of this trouble? There are certain things you may think, okay, my money would help me, or my friend would help me, or my family would help me. Allah will put you in a situation where all the power of the world will not get you out of this trouble except Allah. أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ. Is there God beside Allah? And who guides you in the darkness of land and sea? Even non-Muslims. When you ask, they have a saying, when you're in the middle of the ocean and there's a storm, there is no atheist on the boat. If you're on a boat in a raging ocean and you're afraid you're gonna die, you're gonna believe that there is a God. There is no atheist when you get into trouble, because that's when you find Allah. But the wise people find Allah before they get in trouble, not after they get in trouble. أَمَّنْ يَبْدَأُ الْخَلْقَ ثُمَّ يُعِيدُهُ وَمَنْ يَرْزُقُكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Who begins and repeats creation and sends provision? Nobody. If Allah does not send it, nobody can send it. وَقُلِ الْحَمْدُ. And then the Surat An-Naml finishes with وَقُلِ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ سَيُرِيكُمْ آيَاتِهِ فَتَعْرِفُونَهَا وَمَا رَبُّكَ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ. This is verse 93. And say, all praise is due to Allah. He will show you His signs, and you will recognize them. And your Lord is not aware of what you do. The signs of Allah is all around us. If we choose not to see it, that's our problem. Allah will show it to us whether we, if we recognize it and benefit from it, that's when that's when the benefit comes back to us. So the Surat An-Naml, just to wrap up, it shows 5 elements to establish a superior civilization. You have to have belief in Allah and appreciation of His bounties, of what He has provided. You have to have knowledge and sciences. You have technology and industrial power. You have to have military and economic powers. You can't just say, I believe in Allah, I want to rule this earth. You need means. You need Allah's help, and you need to work and invest in technology and in sciences, and not just focus on worship, because there's another part to our existence, is we have to be Khalifa of this earth, and that takes money, it takes knowledge, it takes effort. And then the 5th one is having a common goal and sharing it by all members. All members share the same goal. Now, the name of the surah was Surat An-Naml, the ants, because the ants, we belittle this little ant, and sometimes, some people may step on it. They are a very organized civilization. They have all of these elements. They all share a common goal. They're all hardworking. They all work as one unit. And Allah wants us to learn from this little insignificant insect that we may look at it insignificantly. It is a highly organized and smart. They have communication. They have delegation of duties, they have order, they have punctuality. They have all of these things. That's why the surah was named after them, is to learn from this little insect. Because if this little insect can do it, what's preventing us from doing it? Other than, everybody wants me, and not us as an ummah. And that's one of the biggest, failures, is we don't share the same goal and work for it. So guiding people to Islam is more effective when it comes from a superior civilization. Look at us. I mean, we live in this country. We have two issues in this country. If you lived in your home country and you do something wrong, they'll accuse you. We live in this country, if you do something wrong, they'll accuse Islam. They'll accuse your faith, they'll accuse your country, they will not accuse you. So our job is to show a level of superiority, not to boast, but to be the best we can be, so that they can see, oh, you're a Muslim, you're impressive. When they see somebody who's a hard worker, punctual, comes on time, does everything, and does more than they ask for, they're going to be impressed. And you're a Muslim too. That's why when you look at, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, for example. I mean, I don't know what level of Islam he is, but by name he is a Muslim, and he was an overachiever in the sports. And other people are influenced by people who excel. So if we excel, we have to excel, not if we have to excel, but because whether we like it or not, we are representatives of Islam in this country. Before you do anything wrong, think twice, because not only you will be accused, your home country and your faith will also be accused. So we have to make sure that we excel in everything what we do for the sake of Allah and for Islam to be strong and to be respected and to be covered. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لكم واستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.